From a kid who learned to start over every few years, to an artist who keeps starting cultural waves on command, Ciara's trajectory doesn't read like luck, it reads like design backed by stamina, timing, and a stubborn refusal to coast. And that's the story we're tracking tonight. A meticulous builder disguised as an effortless performer, a headline name that outlasts the headlines, and a family operation that moves with the discipline of a pro locker room. She is simultaneously the product and the producer, the brand and the operator. And when you line up the footage, Atlanta studios, world tours, baby announcements, foundation launches, and now a new album era, you don't see a hot streak so much as a system that keeps reloading, because beneath the choreography and the gloss there's a newsroom clear sequence of calls. Identify an opening, own the tempo, protect the core, and let the work speak in hooks that ricochet across radio and timelines. The question that pulls us forward is simple and sharp. How does she keep finding a fresh angle just when the internet thinks it has her boxed in? And the early answer arrives in 3 beats. Move early, move clean, and never tell the whole plan until it's ready to land. Which is why the next chapter doesn't start with a comeback, but with a pivot. Critics rarely spot until the numbers are already in. Still, if you want to see the blueprint, you have to rewind past the charts and look for the first decisive moment, the one that turned constant change into a competitive edge. And that means starting with the kid who kept packing up and learning new rooms without losing her center, because that's where the pattern, adapt fast, connect faster, was born. And that's where our report begins, with a teenager writing a list that reads like a contract and treating it like one. The record shows a military-based birth certificate, frequent moves that would unmoor most kids, and a relocation to the South that turned radio into education. Classmates changed, school mascots changed, even the accent around her changed. But 2 things held steady: a fascination with performance and a sense that planning could tame uncertainty. And sources close to those early years point to a morning ritual. Watch Destiny's Child before school, feel the electricity of a stage you can't touch yet, then translate that charge into a written list that refuses to blink. Get discovered, sell records, sustain. That was the cadence, and it wasn't written as a wish but as a map, which explains the way she later spoke about work in clipped, no-filler sentences that sound like assignments more than dreams. In Atlanta studios, that map met opportunity, and what followed looked sudden from the outside but incremental on the inside. Write, rehearse, cut, repeat, until the sound in her head matched the sound from the speakers. And that alignment, rare, bracing, unmistakable, set up a debut that cut through a crowded early 2000s radio dial. The real takeaway, however, is not the geography or even the grind, but the habit those years installed. Treat change as a tempo, build systems that travel, and keep the list close enough to adjust but firm enough to steer. Which is why when the first hit arrived, it wasn't a lottery ticket, it was an expected arrival. And that's the through line from homeroom goals to platinum plaques, a through line that leads directly into the breakout no one could ignore. Goodies wasn't just a song, it was a frequency, a clean, stubborn melody that sliced across formats and made its case in a few bars. And the follow-up era carried that logic forward, with choreography that taught your shoulders where to go before your brain tagged along, a hybrid of precision and swagger that critics struggled to categorize because it borrowed fluently from R&B, pop, and hip-hop without begging any of them for permission. The charts tell one story: fast climbs, sticky dwell times, a second album that proved the first wasn't a fluke, but the camera tells another, an athlete's economy in every move, an editor's discipline in every arrangement, and a frontline reporter's respect for clarity. It is hard to overstate how much that clarity matters in a marketplace jammed with noise, because clarity is what gives a record legs and gives an artist permission to evolve without confusing the audience. And that is exactly what happened as the years wore on. The hits ebbed and surged as cycles do, but the core remained readable, which is why a new single could still feel like a bulletin and not a nostalgia play. If the cost of moving the needle early is that every later move gets measured against an impossible bar, the countermeasure is simple and brutal: reinvention with receipts. And that's the playbook she pulled from when ownership became the message and the music bent to match it, setting the stage for a chapter defined less by label calendars and more by the artist's own clock, a pivot that repositions the narrative from what happened to what's next. Enter the ownership era, where beauty marks became more than a title and started reading like infrastructure. And the reporting here centers on control. Control of masters, schedules, visuals, and most importantly, narrative. By the time the CC rollout took shape, the signals were unmistakable. Announce with precision, seed just enough mystery to trigger speculation, and make the music do the loudest talking, which is why the lead single played like a mission statement, sleek and repeatable, with a remix strategy that extended the life cycle without exhausting the idea. Industry watchers flagged the calendar date circled for the album and noted how the surrounding content snippets, rehearsals, selective behind the scenes, built pressure without flooding the zone. A tactic that keeps curiosity high and fatigue low. Features and final sequencing remain fluid by design, reminding everyone that until the track list is published, everything is provisional. And that discipline, treat the rumor mill as unpaid marketing but guard the facts until its time, mirrors the operational mindset that's defined this phase, where some artists re-enter the conversation by yelling, she re-enters by tightening, letting craftsmanship and timing do the work. And that's why the audience response reads less like a surprise and more like a nod. Of course she still knows how to land a clean hit, and of course she's building something larger around it, with an eye on longevity that makes the rollout feel less like a spike and more like the first leg of a longer campaign, one that flows directly into life off stage, where the logistics would break a lesser team. The personal file is public enough to be verified yet private enough to resist easy narratives. Marriage in the spotlight, 4 children whose milestones unfold in real time, and professional calendars that rarely align neatly, and the way it all functions looks less like chaos and more like choreography. When a veteran quarterback signs a fresh deal on the East Coast, the family's orbit shifts accordingly, and the rhythm of camp, travel, and Sunday pressure becomes background to school runs, birthdays, and album deadlines. An exchange of energy that shows up as comments under posts and cameos in hallways and quick turnarounds through airports. The camera doesn't bother to romanticize that mutual logistics. She anchors a rollout while he anchors a huddle, becomes the unglamorous engine that keeps the brand humane and the household intact. And it's here the internet tends to overreach, turning every rental into a deed and every tour stop into a relocation, which is why our language tonight is careful. Where transactions are on record, we report them. Where content creators offer glossy walkthroughs without the paperwork, we categorize those as entertainment and label them unverified. What is verified is mobility, the capacity to set up shop where the season demands, and fold family life into a schedule that would flatten most people. A capacity that reminds us the headline isn't the mansion so much as the mechanism that moves the people inside it, because that mechanism is what makes the next public act possible. Money tells one story, but intent tells another, and the philanthropic log over the past few years offers hard numbers alongside a pattern. Food insecurity tackled at scale through meal commitments that turn celebrity into leverage. A tuition-free high school launched with partners to widen access rather than widen a profile, and now a producer credit on a historical drama that reframes black wealth for a mainstream audience. A film lane that suggests the next frontier is storytelling ownership as much as song ownership. The consistency here matters. These are not one-off photo ops, but multi-year structures that require budgets, governance, and follow-through. The kind of work that doesn't trend but does change local realities. And when you map those efforts against the timing of album cycles, what emerges is an ecosystem rather than a press tour, a flywheel, where success funds impact and impact deepens the narrative, giving the music a context that algorithms can't fake. Add to that a disciplined approach to risk, public commitments that are measurable, creative bets that diversify rather than distract, and the picture sharpens. This is not random generosity, it's strategy with a conscience, and it feeds the onstage persona, a subtext most artists would kill for. The subtext of purpose, which brings us to the closing question this report set out to answer. How does she keep arriving with something that feels current without chasing the taillights? And the conclusion is straightforward. She treats reinvention as operations, not theater, and the result is a career that reads less like a series of comebacks and more like a continuous broadcast. So if you're watching the next few months, watch the album land, watch the film conversation widen the audience, and watch most of all for the quiet decision that sets up the next surprise, because history suggests it's already on the list. In an era where a rumor can outrun a press release before breakfast, our job is to separate momentum from mythology, so here's the framework we're using on air and online. When the Ciara conversation heats up, first we label anything unverified as unverified, and we do it in plain language. Rumors suggest, reports claim, it's been said that, because clarity protects the audience and frankly the artist. Second, we track origin, since a claim that starts on a fan forum, jumps to a lifestyle blog, and lands on a reaction channel is not the same as a claim sourced to filings, court records, or official announcements. Third, we check timing, because old footage resurfacing with new captions is a well-known tactic that makes last year's rental look like today's purchase, last month's studio visit look like a locked feature, and a casual drive look like a new supercar. Fourth, we watch for hedges. Sources closed, insiders say, and we treat those as narrative smoke, not fire, unless corroborated. Fifth, we keep the album conversation honest, noting that track lists and features remain fluid until published, so the smartest posture is curiosity, not certainty. Sixth, we remind viewers that lifestyle content is a stage with its own lighting, meaning angles, edits, and captions can turn proximity into ownership and a walkthrough into a deed. Seventh, we acknowledge why speculation thrives, because fans are invested, because mystery is a marketing accelerant, and because the algorithm rewards confident voices over careful ones, and then we counter with discipline, giving oxygen to what's real and context to what isn't. Eighth, we anchor every lifestyle headline to the larger through line we've reported all night: an operator mindset, a portable system, a career that treats reinvention as logistics, so a house tour becomes a footnote, not the plot. Ninth, we leave space for updates, promising to revise when facts land, which is how trust is built over time. And finally, we hold the tone, engaging but measured, conversational but rigorous, because when the music drops and the film news builds, the speculation cycle will spike again, and audiences will need a voice that says, here's what's being said, here's what we actually know, and here's why the difference matters, even when the unofficial version sounds spicier, louder, and tailor-made to trend. So we arrive at the closing bulletin, not with a neat bow but with a clearer map. A kid who treated change like a tempo becomes an adult who treats reinvention like a job. A breakout that bent radio becomes a standard that later cycles measure against. A label of comeback gets retired in favor of continuum, because the work never actually stops. In the present tense, the picture is straightforward and potent: an ownership era that tightens the craft and the calendar, a family system that absorbs shock and returns energy, a public footprint that invests in meals, schools, and stories, and a new chapter designed to be experienced in waves, not flashes. What should viewers watch next? Practically speaking, watch how the music moment composes itself, single visual performance, into a stack that builds, not burns. Watch whether the rumored pairings land or evolve into something sharper. Watch for the signature dance vocabulary that tends to migrate from stage to timeline to gym mirror, because that's where culture actually sticks. Watch the film lane, expand the audience, and feed the catalog, an echo loop that makes older records feel new and newer records feel inevitable. And watch, most of all, for the small operational tells: tightened rollout windows, cleaner messaging, fewer leaks that hint a bigger move is cued. If the arc we've traced is accurate, the next surprise won't look like a gamble when it appears. It will look obvious in hindsight, the way good strategy always does. Our newsroom read, then, is simple and unsentimental. Durability here isn't magic, it's muscle memory. And the same list that a teenager once wrote before homeroom is still doing quiet work behind the headline font. In a culture that rewards loudness and punishes patience, this artist keeps choosing patient precision, and that is why the story we'll file tomorrow likely reads like the one we filed tonight. New chapter, same spine, because the system is the star, and the system is built to run. This video is for news and entertainment purposes. All information is drawn from publicly available sources at the time of publication. Some portions discuss online rumors or speculation. These are clearly framed as unverified and should not be treated as facts. No allegations are asserted beyond what reputable outlets have reported. All trademarks, clips, and images remain the property of their respective owners and are used under fair use for commentary, criticism, and reporting. If you own rights to any material featured and have concerns, please contact me via the email on my About page for prompt removal or correction. Corrections and updates will be added in the pinned comment or description.